The country of Iran is turning it up in the Middle East, and I'm going to get straight to the point and not waste your time. At the time of making this video, it has been confirmed on Reuters and all over the internet right now. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says they have attacked espionage centers in Erbil, Iraq. Now, if you are unaware why Iran would care so much about espionage centers within Iraq, right now Iran has a ton of momentum being allies with Iraq. Right now, the Prime Minister of Iraq has even talked about and praised Iran recently in CNN interviews and a bunch of other interviews, to the point where the current Prime Minister of Iraq, wants to kick the U.S. military out of Iraq. And right now he's backed by a ton of pro-Iranian militiamen, some good, some bad, but nonetheless, this is massive news. This is either a direct response to the US military's actions in Yemen, or it's just something Iran has been planning to do. Now, something else I want to mention, it hasn't been confirmed, but just so you know, it might get confirmed at the time of making this video. There are also reports of attacks happening in Syria that also came from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, taking out IS targets who are not friends with Iran, operating in Syria, and Iran has decided to eliminate them. Now, the reason why it's confirmed, unconfirmed, and a little conflicting, again, I'm trying to give you guys accurate news, is because there's also reports of Israel conducting their own strikes near Aleppo, Syria. Syrian government officials and news agencies reported this, but there's some other conflicting news. So again, ignore that if that's not true, but just so you know, if it pops up, it's true. Nonetheless, again, this is massive news. Very, very massive. Now, there's no reports from the DoD or State Department that any U.S. personnel have been attacked directly, or we also don't know, again, if this is a direct response to try letting the U.S. military know Iran is in the region, so stay away from us. But again, right now, Iran and the U.S. military are fighting a very scary game of this proxy chess. As we know, the British and the U.S. military have taken out a ton of targets down in Yemen. And if you're asking me, why do we care about Yemen if Iran is messing with Iraq? Understand this. Iran right now is buddy-buddies with Iraq. They're buddy-buddies with the Houthis who operate out of Yemen. They're buddy-buddies with everyone in Syria and Lebanon and down in Palestine. So right now, Iran has a ton of influence, and they're trying to work the media. They're trying to get a lot of people on their side, essentially to kick the U.S. presence out of the Middle East. At the end of the day, the number one group right now stopping Iran from getting straight to Israel is the U.S. military. A lot of people are very anti-U.S. military in the Middle East, and that's okay. That's your opinion. A lot of people are pro-U.S. military in the Middle East. But the biggest issue right now for the U.S. military, there's no clear-cut answer as to why anyone is there right now. But again, if U.S. forces were to get attacked, they haven't been, but if they were, this probably would have instigated something really, really bad. I don't even want to say the word. I don't want to say the word war. I don't want to say the word conflict, but it could have been. I think Iran is smart enough to know to not engage directly with the U.S. military because they don't have to. They have people like Iran's Revolutionary Guard. They have other groups who quite literally operate throughout the Middle East and train militia groups to fight Western assets, whether U.S. military, whether Saudi Arabia, and whether Israel. So again, it has been confirmed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard that they have taken out targets of espionage. So I just want to lay down the framework and foundation as to why they care so much about Iraq. Pay attention to Iraq. I'm almost positive I just talked about this in a very recent video talking about Yemen. Right now, Iraq is certainly popping up, but not in the way that you would imagine like back in 2003 or the mid-2000s. Do not expect some sort of ground campaign or ground war. I think in Afghanistan, the Taliban sort of let everyone know and showed the world that you can't fight the U.S. military one-on-one, but you can extend a conflict 3 presidents later, and eventually the U.S. military is just going to get tired. They're not necessarily going to quit, but they're not going to get the full funding from the government or the people to stay in the war. So right now, this does seem to look like the strategy for Iran. One thing I will say that's quite different, we also have major flip-flopping in military strategy and tactics. typically the US military are the ones that are really aggressive with their war tactics. The issue with Iraq right now, there is a policy that the U.S. military is not allowed to be in active ground campaigns or be on the assault. They're only allowed to defend themselves. So right now, Iran could quite literally do whatever they want in Iraq, taking out espionage centers. Now, I'm not saying that the DoD or the State Department has anything to do with these espionage centers, but if I had to make an educated guess, of course the U.S. military, or really the government, is going to be in favor of espionage centers who are anti-Iran. And again, remember, in Iraq, they're not necessarily super pro-Iran, but the majority of the country are Shia. The majority of the country in Iran are Shia, so it only makes sense for two Islamic countries who share a common practice in religious beliefs, in government beliefs, to start to form together and to be allies once again in the Middle East. Again, straight from the Prime Minister himself, and I made a video on this already, on the U.S. military getting kicked out of Iraq. He knows the only way for the United States to get kicked out of Iraq is if the war in Israel ends. And he's even saying that war is never going to end. So let's just kick the U.S. military out now. So let us see what happens. In my opinion, I think we're going to start to see these really weird clandestine strikes from Iran, because I think Iran is realizing that we are already sanctioned and we should have enough backing from China, enough backing from Russia. We don't have to worry about the economic sanctions from the West. Let us do what we're going to do. Let us keep controlling all of our factions throughout the Middle East because it seems to be working. These factions will never ever be able to actually beat the U.S. military indefinitely. But what they will be able to do is to cause confusion and to cause doubt for the U.S. military strategy. And look, the Houthis are doing a really good job at this because they actually managed to take out or to strike a civilian ship, a U.S. civilian ship, and nobody got hurt. They got away with it. Again, I made a recent video on that. But again, this proves that as long as these clandestine strikes can happen, they're just going to drag in a war. And we all know Biden doesn't want a war, and the United States does not want a war. Not after Afghanistan, not after Iraq. So again, strikes in Erbil from the Iran's Revolutionary Guard to take out espionage centers. That's currently what's happening at the time of making this video. Thank you.